So here we go. Okay, so good morning. We are here today to talk about crisis intervention. My name is Nate Ferguson. I go by Nathaniel as well. That's my full name. And I'm glad that you're able to be here today. So let's see, I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Are you able to see the slideshow?
Yes, I am.
Perfect. All right, so we'll get started here. Okay, crisis intervention. So what is a crisis? So a crisis is the perception or experience of an event or situation as an intolerable difficulty that exceeds the person's current resources and coping mechanisms. A crisis and a crisis intervention is anything but linear. Crises are case by case, and crisis interventions are case by case, especially chaos theory here. So what is chaos theory? So chaos theory is a model that considers disorder, unpredictability, and lack of control as normal parts of transition processes. And the starts, the stops, the do-overs, and the turnovers, and the U-turns, excuse me. Hi, Nicole. Just want to let you know we're recording this for future training purposes. So you're more than welcome to keep your video off if that is preferred by you. Okay, so we're talking about crisis intervention just to catch you up here. Okay, and then we're also looking at the conflict cycle here. So I'm sure many of you are fully aware of how this happens as parents and as also foster parents. So there's the crisis, we see right here in this little picture here, the youth, the parent, the foster parent, and the chaos and the conflict determinant as well. And it's just a continuous cycle. So it's a matter of how we can recognize when we're caught in this conflict cycle, the power struggle, and when to tap out as the adult and ask for help. And we, as also in GA Family Services, deal with this as well as the caseworkers or as the clinician, the nurse, and etc., right? So it's all good in theory. So how can we transition this into practice? So we're going to be looking at the hybrid model of crisis intervention today. So the hybrid model in itself is looking at various different ways that we can include into one training here today. It's a matter of looking at different perspectives, looking at different types of cultures, and how we're able to bring what we know and our knowledge to this and be able to be open to various other ways as well. So we're going to be looking at a case study as well today. So we're looking at the snapshot here, right? So I'm going to give you a little bit more of a description, but right here you can kind of give a basis of exactly kind of like a summary of what's going on here. So this case study focuses on Jane Doe, a 14-year-old ninth grade student residing in a foster home. Jane has been living with her foster family for a year after being placed in foster care due to her parents' incarceration. While Jane initially struggled in her new environment, she has made progress through counseling and support. However, recent developments, including her parents, through counseling and support, yes, sorry. Recent developments, including her parents are now on parole and court-ordered visitations with her parents, have led to changes in her behavior, posing new challenges to her overall well-being and resilience. So giving a little background here, Jane came under the care of a foster agency after her parents were incarcerated. She experienced significant trauma and, to what we know, witnessed and experienced neglect, community violence, emotional abuse, and criminal activities. Despite her initial struggles in the foster home, Jane has made improvements in various aspects of her life, engaging in mental health counseling and forming new bonds with peers and adults. So recent developments, the court ruled for the parents' parole for good behavior. The judge also mandated in-person visitations with video conferences scheduled on separate days. Shortly after visitations began, Jane's teacher and school social worker noticed concerning challenges in her behavior. Jane developed increased distractibility, incomplete or missing homework, heightened irritability towards peers and adults, and signs of anxiety. Jane's foster parents observed her withdrawal and reduced interaction upon returning from school, with increased behavior outbursts and resistance to physical contact. So we have a little bit of that right here in this case study in this next slide right here. So current challenges, Jane's recent behavior changes and increased emotional distress and judgment in her support system, The intensified frequency of mental health counseling from once every 3 weeks to biweekly is an initial response to address her growing needs. However, a comprehensive approach is required to ensure Jane's well-being and resilience are prioritized during this challenging period. So we're going to be coming back to this case study in a little bit here, okay? So before we get into that, I just want to hear from the both of you here. What are your thoughts so far? And meaning, what are your thoughts in the fact of what does this seem to you in what you deal with as foster parents, or even as a parent in itself?
Hi, it's Rebecca here. This is very realistic. This is something that's happened to us with children, and it's definitely something that you see quite frequently.
I appreciate your input, Rebecca. And so I'm sure when this is something that you've dealt with frequently or have seen frequently, this can be pretty stressful, right? And you can feel the chaos theory that we talked about a little bit earlier. And also you can feel how you can get into that cycle, that chaos cycle, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, thank you. And Nicole, please jump in at any point that you feel necessary, okay?
Yeah, no problem. I'm gonna have to agree as well. It's definitely something I've seen over the years.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So like I said, we'll come back to this case study here, okay? So the first thing before we jump into more about the hybrid model of crisis intervention, I just want to touch on safety specifically and how important this really is always operational, right? Physical and psychological, your safety and the youth safety. And it even goes beyond just our safety as a parent or even as a foster parent. And I'm not a foster parent, but as a parent, we're not only thinking of our safety, we're also thinking if we have a spouse or a partner that we're thinking of their safety as well. And then we're also thinking of if there's other children in the home as well, we're thinking of their safety. But then, of course, we're thinking of the youth, the foster child's youth safety as well. So step one of the hybrid model, we're looking at the predisposition and the engaging, right? So I work in the health homes department, and one thing that we utilize in there is the safety crisis emergency plan. And so even though that's very specific to what health homes does, we work also with the foster care caseworkers too, right? We also work with the county workers, and so they have their own safety plans a lot of times as well. And there are times where if the youth is old enough and they refuse to do a safety plan and whatnot, that can be pretty difficult. And hopefully that's something that we can better work on and collaborate, not only with you all as foster parents, but also with the youth and also with their other providers and especially their mental health providers. So when we're looking at the safety and crisis emergency plan, we're looking at, what can we do to best support this youth in our home? So whether that be better understanding of their style and how they're able to cope with situations and whatnot, right? We're also looking at seeing how we're able to de-escalate a crisis as well, and even before we can get to that crisis. So when we're looking at a safety crisis emergency plan here, something that comes up is that we're looking at the green, yellow, and red zones here. So in the green zone, everything is going great, right? The youth is participating, they're communicating, they're involved in the things that they really enjoy, whether that be sports or the arts or doing a board game at home with the family, or just being able to participate in general, right? So, and that's things that we want them to continue to do. So if they were to get into the yellow zone, well, they're becoming agitated, right? The youth are. They're just not their normal self, and their normal self can be very different for every youth, right? And so they're not in the green zone anymore. They're starting to elevate, and we're seeing those signs, whether it's their verbal or their nonverbal communication, their body language, the tone of voice, and those sort of things. And so that's where we want to start intervening as parents, or even for foster parents, or even on my end of things, and as I speak for the rest of GA Family Services, as the workers. And so we want to try to find ways that we can bring back down to the green zone. And like it says on this slide, to ensure that the youth is feeling in control. So we want to be able to be in control of what we can control, and we want to ensure that the youth are able to control what they're able to control. And so when we get to the red zone, we're in crisis mode now. So what is it that we can do to best support the youth and through the crisis that they're dealing with? So I want to bring it back to you all that are on the Zoom right now. What are some ways that both you as foster parents have found to be useful when de-escalating the youth in your home?
A huge one for our family is redirection, um, calming stuff, whatever you can find. Sometimes just sitting down and practicing breathing methods, the blowing the candle out, breathe in, count to 5, blowing the candle out. A lot of times that will help, but just not almost 100% of the time, redirection is the best way to get them at least calm down enough where you can talk.
Those are really good examples. Thank you, Becky. Do you have any
For,
examples? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, for my household, besides redirection, once it's redirected, we do a lot of like art therapy and crafts.
Those are great examples. Thank you, Nicole. So thank you both. So, and even at the end here at this slide here, right? Clarifying your intentions, providing reminders that you are here in the present to support, which sounds very exactly what you both had just stated. Excuse me. Step 2, we're defining the crisis, right? What is the child's point of view? The core listening skills, empathy, genuineness, and acceptance or positive regard, which is exactly combining with the examples that you had given in step 1. Step 3, we're providing support, right? Psychological support, reflection of feelings, and owning statements such as, I am with you right here. Logistical support are the basic necessities meant for the youth of food, clothing, shelter, or even just that basic support of the shelter itself, right? The capacity of that umbrella of, okay, so you have the shelter, you have your safe space, the food that can give comfort, but also other things in that shelter, right? Such as books or even art therapy or the redirection to other activities in the home or even outside the home. So that would even mean, outdoor activities as well. Whatever is best supported or that is most useful in your homes, of course. So even social support, formal, the providers, and then informal, family and community. Informational support, resource referrals as well. So even beyond if there are things that are working, but there just seems to be a clear indication for you all that there just needs to be something more, in your experience as foster parents and what you're seeing for the youth that are in your home. And whether it's you all reaching out and finding those resources, or even coming to us at GA Family Services and saying, hey, there's just some things that we're seeing, and what are your thoughts of how we can best support this youth in our home? Because we want to make sure that we're keeping them here, and and just try to make sure that we're finding the resources that they need. So step 4, we're examining the alternatives. So situational support's exactly what I was talking about with the different types of resources that we have, whether it's up in Erie County or in Batavia or even in Albion or wherever it may be in Western New York, right? Is just trying to find out what exactly is going to best suit in your home, and also for the youth, of course, in the community and whatnot. Coping mechanisms. This is something exactly what the examples that you have brought forth with, right? So these are different ways to cope with it. So in art therapy, you're able to express the ways that you're feeling inside by drawing them out, or even writing things out. One example, we were in a staff meeting not too long ago, and one of the foster families, or excuse me, one of the caseworkers brought up that a foster family had suggested for their youth in their home to, if they didn't feel comfortable right away, to just talk about what they were feeling, just write it out and answer some questions that the foster parents had written down, and then we can come to the table and talk about it later. And this was a wonderful idea that I haven't thought about before. And I was like, man, this is a great way to connect with an older youth, or maybe a younger youth as well, that's able to understand the question and that's written down and be able to answer that. And whether it's writing it out or drawing it out to answer the question, whatever is easiest for that youth to be able to collaborate with you all as foster parents, and also even for us as the workers at the agency. And positive and constructive thinking patterns. I'm sure you all are aware that there's a higher connection that you all will have with these youth when we present positive affirmation to them. As I know, I feel better when I hear positive affirmation towards myself as well, not only as in this job but also just as a human being itself, right? And one interesting correlation to this too is there was a study done where they in a classroom where they had two separate areas for plants, and one plant was being talked to in a very negative way, and the other plant was talked to in a very positive way. And after so many weeks, they came back to these plants and they noticed that the one plant that was being talked to in a negative way was near death. It almost died. It was being watered the same amount of water. It was given the same amount of food as the other plant that was being spoken to with a positive affirmation. And then when we went over to the plant that was being spoken to in a positive way, that plant was flourishing. It was doing so well, they had to repot it. And so when we look at this example right here, is that when we're able to talk in a very positive way to the youth that we're working with and showing them the support through our actions as well, there's a higher chance that these youth will flourish in our homes, right? Step 5, planning to reestablish control. So putting the puzzle pieces together. So just understanding to whatever capacity that we're able to in that moment, and seeing the signs of how they're starting to struggle, going into that yellow zone, going into that red zone, and trying to find out, okay, so if they're going in this direction, what am I able to do to have control and to provide the youth with control, right? And excuse me, creating a short-term plan linked with step 4. So whether that's a plan of care, and I'm referring to health homes here, but that's also referred to what happens in foster care as well, right? We have those different types of plans, whether it's through a FASP or whatnot. and then also translating into immediate action steps the youth can own and comprehend. So just trying to simplify things wherever they are in their comprehension, and also just even when we simplify things, I know as an adult, I prefer to have things simplified. I'll throw out bullet points or whatever, so that way I know exactly what I'm looking at, so that way I can best understand it and I can translate this back, so that way I know that I understand it, right? So to any capacity, just simplifying things and making things simple is really the best way we can best support our youth. So step 6, we're obtaining commitment. So the youth's ability to comprehend, own the plan, and implement it with support can be brief and simple, just like I was saying. So I was jumping the gun here. We're going from 5 to 6, but I'm sure that both of you are seeing here, and anyone that's watching as well, is that all of these steps really intertwine with each other. They really mold together in a very well produced way, right? So even though it's a lot of information, these are things that we're doing already on a daily basis, right? And then especially I want to touch on self-care here. So self-care not only pertaining to the youth, of course, but also for you as the parent, right? So even as adults, it's hard to remind ourselves of this. And I even struggle with this at times of giving myself some self-care here. So it's what self-care is really doing for us is we're promoting positive health outcomes, physically and mentally. Staying connected is another example. So staying connected with your family or your friends or people in the community that you're very close to, which helps, keep that bond going, right? And being able to express how we're feeling inside about situations, and being able to have somebody that's willing to listen, but also that, it's that back and forth, right? That two-way street where even active listening for somebody else, whether it's a friend, family, or somebody in the community, it still gives us some content, right? It helps us to feel good knowing that we're able to be there for somebody else as well. So that's a two-way self-care right there. Focus more on the positive. There's going to be a lot of negative, and I'm sure the both of you as foster parents and even us as an agency, we have seen a lot has happened since, especially the pandemic, right? And it seems like a horrible thing to bring up, right? Because it's something that is so hard to talk about at times about our own experiences from the pandemic. However, we're seeing so much of these different types of behaviors coming from various youth, coming out of the pandemic. And so there's going to be a lot of negative that we're going to see or that we have already seen. So trying to find the positive within the negative while addressing the negative too, of course. So it's hard, but it's something that we can strive for, right? And engage in the things that we enjoy, whether it's bike riding or watching a movie as a family, or binge watching that show that we really enjoy, or that book that we love to dig right into. Cooking, that can be another thing. There are so many different examples that are very enjoyable that we enjoy as human beings. Setting obtainable goals is another great one. So if it's almost like that New Year's resolution, right? Except hopefully we can make these goals where we can obtain them in a positive way, so that way we're not harming ourselves. So for myself, one goal that I've had for self-care is to lose weight, and life gets busy, especially as adults, especially as parents, and so you're trying to intermix all those different schedules and whatnot. And so something that I did not make obtainable for myself was saying in a month I will lose weight. I didn't give myself too much on how much weight it would be, but I mentioned I'm going to lose quite a bit of weight. And in that month, excuse me, in that month I did not lose any weight. And so However, I went to the doctors not too long ago, and from May until this point, I had lost 10 pounds. I said, you know, that's a really good obtainable goal because I'm setting such high expectations for myself that I can't meet those goals. So, so that's just an example coming from myself of one way to make more obtainable goals and what really works best for you, because every goal is going to be different, and especially for your lifestyle on how that's going to best work, right? And making sleep a priority. Now, this is a really difficult one as well, right? As parents. So, as much as we want to get the sleep that we want, we're not always going to get it. Whether if we're sick and we're having allergies, such as what I'm dealing with this cough, and or even if your children are not doing well as well, right? Or if there's a crisis going on, it's a struggle. So, if we're able to get that sleep in, definitely make it a priority for sure. For example, last night my two children um, kept waking my wife and I up during the night, and at one point they ended up in our bed. And so I'm sure you've had this happen to you before, where you get kicked once in a while, and you're like, "What is this? Well, where's this light coming from?" So just know that you know, trying to make sleep a priority is really good self-care. And it's not always obtainable, but when we can get a hold of it, definitely I recommend trying to make it a priority. So we're going to come back to the case study again. Okay. So, excuse me, I'm going to show this slide right here. And then in about a minute or so, I mean, would you all like me to read that the whole case study again? Would that be easier for you all?
I'm good as long as the other person's good.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Sounds good. And then I'll show this other slide right here as well. So looking at this case study again and going over the hybrid model, I would like for you all to provide some examples of interventions that you believe would be helpful for this youth through their crisis. So interventions meaning going back to the safety crisis emergency plan that I was talking about in health homes, and the green, yellow, and red. So the green zone, like I mentioned before, that youth is doing well, right? They're able to enjoy the things in their life, right? And then when they get into that yellow zone, that's when we start throwing in those coping mechanisms where how can we redirect that youth back into the green zone, right? So just if you would like to speak up, that's fine. Or if you would like to put it in the chat, you're more than welcome to do that as well.
I think keeping very close contact with the caseworker, letting them know what's going on, and keeping yourself open to suggestions from other people as well, but also encouraging the youth, encouraging this child to engage with friends, and even take it as far as inviting the friends over to have like a play date, or I don't know what they call it, to hang out or whatnot. Encourage that child to get back into the social group, and maybe even making um the visitation, maybe making it fun, where afterwards you go for ice cream, or you do something special afterwards, so that way they have something to look forward to afterwards, and it's that redirection of something good, whereas they wouldn't have that before maybe.
That's a great example. Thank you. And I also want to jump on that too. Making the visitation fun afterwards. I haven't thought of that before. And so I'm really glad that you brought that up, because, it's hard to tell sometimes, especially if there's a lot of unknown when they start those visitations again with their biological parents, and trying to better understand what the biological parents are dealing with, or how they understand how to parent, and what they might be struggling with as well. and just not knowing where they're at just yet, right? We only know so much information that whether it's GA Family Services Agency is able to give us at that time, or even the county worker. Sometimes we don't always get all the information. So, and also, I can't imagine what this is like, but I know as a caseworker or case manager, as a health homes worker, is that that first phone call can be a little awkward, right? So saying, hey, this is who I am. And even going back to the hybrid model itself, going through those stages, a lot of that can be applied to even working with bio parents, right? So that first engagement, just introducing yourselves, saying, hey, this is who I am. And just know that I'm here to try to work with you and collaborate with you. And I'm sure there's been moments where that collaboration's been great with bio parents, and there's a lot of times, unfortunately, that it doesn't work out so great. But just know that we're here as an agency to best support both the bio parents and both you as foster parents to try to make it work as best as possible, especially for the youth, because I can't imagine what they're going through, right? I can only imagine, what they're going through, but I don't know exactly how that is with experience, because I've never dealt with what many of the youth that we work with are dealing with on a daily basis. So, excuse me. Nicole, do you have any thoughts on interventions?
I'm really the same with that. The only other thing I would add would maybe be do self-care with them too. When we have a tough time, we go out and get pedicures and get our hair done together and stuff like that. Even my teenage boy will go and grab a pedicure if we went. He hasn't gone yet, but he did mention he would. So something to think about.
Nice, neat. And that's something that always seems like it's just for somebody that in as a someone that identifies as male may not feel like they can do. And but to be honest with you, I've done it before, and it's great. So that's cool. That's cool that they're open to that. So, but these are both great interventions and great ways that we can best support, especially in this case study, how we can help Jane out with her situation. So even I also wanted to mention also in the conflict cycle is that it's not only just a cycle, it's a wave, right? It's like a roller coaster. So even when we start different types of therapies, and not really so much as GA Family Services, unless we have that clinician, or even the skill builder does a lot of clinical work, right? And so when we're going through different types of interventions, or even different types of therapies, I'm sure you all see where it doesn't seem like that therapy is working or that intervention is working. And that's okay. That's absolutely okay. So sometimes if we're able to, we can throw in different types of interventions, such as what you had mentioned as self-care, doing the self-care with that youth, or even making that after the visitation a special event. That encouragement, that redirection, just finding different ways so that way we can better understand how we can best support the youth through this therapy or even this roller coaster. Because there's times where the youth is doing great and there's no concerns or whatever, and so we're like, okay, we're just writing this out, and then there's a moment where there might be a memory that pops back up of a situation that happened to that youth, or there might have been a bad day that youth had, and it just they went from 0 to 100 real quick, right? And so just finding those different ways that we can best support them, right? So going, I'm going to bring you all back into, can you still see the slideshow?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. Let's see. Oh. Well, that didn't work out well. My apologies. Let's see. There we go. Okay. So, just want to end things here a little bit here. Types of services GA Family Services provides. So we have the trainings, we have respite, We have assessments, plan of care, and safety crisis plans as well. Crisis intervention, monthly check-ins, stress scales, and on-call. So I'm going to direct right here to the respite and on-call, and these two things are highly regarded in ways that we can best support you as an agency as well. So respite meaning, and you all are aware of what respite means, of course, and whether that might be day respite or night respite, and just know that we're here to best support you, whether it's planned or in a crisis. We can find ways to help you all, especially for the youth, of course. And on call, whether it's, I've been part of the on call. I haven't been on call for you all in the West Seneca office because I'm in the Jamestown office. But just in my experience with on call, I've done two different ways of this, right? Where I'll just be on the call and just talk it out with you all, with the foster parents, or even talking with the youth over the phone. And sometimes that works, right? Sometimes you just need that other person, just an outlet, just to be able to express the situation and how stressful it can be for not only you or even your partner or spouse. And I can only imagine what that may feel like in that moment, because you all have that youth in your home. They are living with you, so you are with them pretty much 24/7, where we only see the youth depending on our roles, of course, whether it's monthly or weekly, whatever that may be. It can be very stressful for you all as foster parents. So just know that utilizing that on call is what it's there for, is just to give us a call and through that crisis, let us help you through that crisis, whether it's over the phone or if we need to come out in person, of course, that is the other option as well. So whatever that may be, we're here to help you all. As stress scales as well. Stress scales, I'm sure they're boring, right? It's just another tool that it feels like, oh, we have to go through this, and just know that these stress scales are ways that we can find to best support you all as foster parents. And please let us know also if there's anything that you feel like we can improve as well as an agency to best support you all, because we want to be able to make sure that we are supporting you as foster parents, and not only verbally, but also through action as well, right? And then, these trainings are here for you all. And also the assessments are able to be able to, well, that's really part of the stress scales, right? The assessments itself. So so these are different things that we can provide. And here's a list of different contact information as well. We have the Jamestown on-call, West Seneca on-call, and all these various numbers I'm sure you all have on handy as well. So just know that we're here to support you all. So I'm going to end the recording here.